Hello and welcome to another episode of Statford Bridge Chelsea by the Numbers. Chelsea win. It wasn't pretty, but they won. And Chelsea needed this in a weekend where Bournemouth lost, Villa lost, Newcastle lost, City lost, Forest won against Brighton. But you had a lot of chance to create separation, or at least to just pick up points ahead of your top four chasing opponents, and Chelsea did. They won. It was not nearly as convincing as last year's 5-0 drubbing of West Ham when West Ham were on the beach. I thought Graham Potter did some pretty smart things about how to play Chelsea. That was always one of his real strengths as a coach, his ability to set up a press or defensive ideas against opposition was always very, very, very good. That it was definitely the strongest part of his game was the defensive side of things. And Chelsea didn't play great in this game. I think there are more positives to take away than what felt like the reaction I was reading on social media. I wasn't able to watch the game live. I watched it back later. So obviously some negatives as well with injuries, but I think there were some things I liked more than I expected, and I think actually there's some very useful information for Enzo Maresca to take away. Headline numbers-wise, 1.7 to 1.2 XG, 22 shots to 14. This is kind of the flip side that Chelsea had against City last week, where there's a huge chance that's clearly offside, but isn't flagged as such, so it goes into the data regardless, which is the Kudus header off the post right after Chelsea make it 1-1. So really it's something like a 1.7 to 1 XG game, which is honestly probably a little bit below what you'd expect versus West Ham, but not awful. I think, again, whatever. 2 big chances to 1, 22 shots to 14, 34 to 24 on box touches. A little bit ahead on set play, expected goal difference, but nothing crazy. 15 shots inside the box. To me, the thing that gets real angsty or real problematic is Chelsea take 22 shots with an average XG per shot of like 0.07. That's really bad. And if you watch this game, I felt very frustrated at the number of really low quality chances that Chelsea settled for when they had significantly better avenues to create better chances. So many shots through traffic when slips or connections were available, and especially in the first half. In the first half, I think Chelsea put a 0.9 XG on 12 shots. In the second half, 10 shots for 0.8 XG, a little bit better. But it was just like a very not good from a creative standpoint. And we'll get the tactics board out and we'll talk about some things, but I think that was a very disappointing thing, was seeing Chelsea settle for shots from distance when they had legitimate ability to get into the box. Like, I thought they actually did a pretty good job using the winger to draw 2v1s and then create +1s on the wide center backs and create extra players inside the box. The Neto goal comes from they play Neto, James comes as support. Actually, it might have been Gusto at that point. Gusto comes as support and draws 3 defenders. They're able to load up at the back post. Falls to just having numbers in the box, right? Like, we've talked about this so much that when Chelsea go really crossy, which they did in this game, they were very crossy in this game. I think they attempted 12 crosses, which is a lot for Chelsea. They just needed to get the numbers in the box to be threatening if there's knockdowns or to attack the first one, right? Like, it's not like they have Chris Wood to attack crosses or something like that, or Andy Carroll, but just by virtue of Neto takes a touch to his left foot, he's going to swing it to the back post. You have Enzo Fernandez, then you have Mark Guiu, and then you have Cucurella, and then you have Nkunku arriving. Like, you have 4 players attacking 3 defenders or 4 defenders, sometimes the ball's going to drop and you're going to get good stuff out of it. I don't think it's a super reliable way to create, but it is a way. And I think a lot of this game is weird because West Ham score first. West Ham did not create very much at all in this game. The big chance they get is the Kudus one off the post, and then there's another one that's blocked right at the end by Tosin off of like a frankly ridiculous fast break to be happening at 90+4 when you're winning the game. It was genuinely insane. I think actually one of the big takeaways from this game is like this team is wildly immature. They were winning the game and West Ham were gassed, and Caicedo is making runs beyond Nkunku while Nkunku is like, where are you going? We're winning. Pass the ball around and kill the game. Levi Colwill in injury time is hitting 75-yard diagonals to Neto instead of just passing it around until the game is over because they were dead. Very, very immature performance going up 2-1, I thought. But I think a lot of this game comes down to like Levi Colwill had an absolute horror show. And if he plays even like 6 out of 10, I think this is a pretty comfortable 2-0 win for Chelsea. The goal comes from a really terrible Levi Colwill giveaway. Kudus gets their other good chance in the first half comes from Colwill just sleeping on a long ball. I thought he was extremely poor as a passer. 80% pass completion for a center back in a game where West Ham were defending quite deep is dreadful. I do not think Levi Colwill had a very good game at all. And now it's like kind of a... Colwill's been pretty poor a few weeks in a row. Misses last week through injury. And now I'm like, I don't know what's going on here, Mr. Colwill. So that's one to keep an eye on. But I thought he was very, very poor. Aside for... And interestingly, that's really reflected in the Mark R stats. Ball progression stuff, where normally in a game like this, Colwill would be way out here and way up here, and he was not at all. James was a much more effective progressor. Tosin was a much more effective progressor. Colwill was not effective as a passer in this game, which is really quite rare for him. But I think there were 2 interesting things tactically that happened in this game. We'll get the board out here. So Chelsea set up the way they have against every single team that defends 5. They go with a diamond in midfield. So it's a 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2 or whatever you want to call it. That comes into a back 3. James, Tosin, Colwill is the back 3 here. And against back 5s, it's always the diamond midfield. You end up with one midfielder as an 8, the fullback as the other 8, Palmer as the 10. And in theory, you can end up in situations where you can put all these players on the last line and you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against 5, right? Like this is Enzo Maresca's whole thing is how many players do you have on your last line? We're going to put 1 more. That's the whole thing. And what happened in this game is that West Ham were basically entirely content to clog the middle of the pitch and to let Chelsea pass the ball to the wingers and to have the wing back jam them hard to get pressure from the inside from Kudus and from Soler, have the wide center back as extra, have the 6 as extra, and make it very, very difficult for the wingers to create. This is the whole game. At the same time, because it's 5-2-3, they have so much density inside that if you want to play Enzo Fernandez or Cucurella, your winger has to push the wing back high, and they have to come low to come get the ball. And when they come low to get the ball, it's very difficult to find Palmer because there's so much density in the middle of the pitch. And so you end up in these like weird 3v3s in wide areas that aren't that dangerous. This is the whole game. So we saw two things that I thought worked. One, Enzo Fernandez on the right side of the pitch, as always, is so much better than when he's on the left side of the pitch. I don't even think Enzo had a particularly good game today, but he gets into the box way more frequently. He makes a great run in behind for from a Nani Madueke slip. 9 passes into the final third. I thought he was so much more effective on the right side of the pitch. The problem that we saw is that when things got pretty stagnant, instead of bringing Enzo deeper to get on the ball and twisting your box, right, to go back to a box or whatever, to maybe adjust, because now maybe you can like draw someone and Palmer can get it here or whatever that situation looks like. You'd end up with Enzo Fernandez would get high and wide, and now Palmer's dropping to connect. And I've been thinking about this a lot because I watched Arsenal City on the weekend, and basically Arsenal's whole solution to their build, the fact that Declan Rice and Thomas Partey, well, talented players, are not very good at shedding pressure on their back to turn and face forward. Their whole solution was, we're going to split Rice and Partey, and we're going to let Odegaard come deep and get us going forward. And it worked really, really well. As soon as Odegaard got the ball, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan got nowhere near him. And he would turn and Arsenal would get up the pitch, and he would draw so much attention with him when he came deep that it would open up all these available avenues to play into Havertz, to link, or whatever it was. And I thought it worked really well. And I've been thinking about this with Palmer, who, when Chelsea are having a hard time like breaking down a block, Palmer does this, right? Usually it's out into this space, but he will come find it centrally. And we've seen it not work, specifically because he takes stupid risks where like somebody will come press him from behind and he'll try a flick around the corner and it doesn't come off. And the other is that even if he does turn and square up, his risk appetite, the amount of risk he takes on in his passing, is so high that if it doesn't come off, you have like Caicedo's high now and Enzo's high now, and it's just like the worst transitions imaginable. And that was the thing that happened here, where very often, even in the final third, when everybody's much higher up the pitch than this, Palmer would come out of his kind of edge of the box role to link things in the middle of the pitch, would then try a ridiculous through pass because Enzo Fernandez is here and Caicedo actually did a very good job defending transitions, I thought. I think Caicedo was probably Chelsea's best player today. He would play like these ridiculous passes forward, and now it's just these awful transitions. It's these awful transitions because Palmer's not going to stop the transition. So I think a huge thing is that Chelsea's solution to breaking down more organized structures like this has to be getting Enzo Fernandez on the ball facing forward and Palmer ahead of him. Because we've seen so often when Palmer's between the lines, like this looks like an impossible pass from Enzo to Palmer. But how often have we seen he just goes boop in between, and now it's this really, really dangerous moment. So I think that is a huge thing that Chelsea really needs to do. I think the other is that like Jackson was really, really poor. I'm not going to talk about Jackson so much because I don't want to go very long today. I thought Jackson was dreadful. He also appeared to have tweaked his hamstring, and if he's out for an extended period of time, Chelsea are so cooked. Like they don't really have 9 options now unless it's Nkunku. I thought Guiu was actually okay when he came on. I like him. He tries hard. He has a really good physical profile. He occupies center backs, makes the ball stick. Like I think he's a useful player. If he has to play 1,000 minutes in the league, like it's over. And if it's Nkunku, I just don't think that's the one. The one I do think for Nkunku is that I thought West Ham were very, very deliberate about like, we actually do not care even one bit if Marc Cucurella gets the ball inside the structure. Like he was the free man all the time. And unlike what was happening with Malo Gusto earlier in the season where he was the free man on the right side and it was like, oh my God, he's making all the decisions. It was like, we're just going to put bodies behind Cucurella and like get the ball. And if you want to try something, go for it, man. But we know you're going to pass backwards or wide. And so what Enzo Maresca did, and I'm gonna praise him for this, because I've been very critical. Enzo Maresca, 52, 61, 61. That right there is over 100 sub minutes. Done deal. Chalobah comes on right at the 90th minute, again, for Cole Palmer, who was flagging. Another sub I've asked for. Like, okay, not bad. So Enzo Maresca makes the subs early. Marguillo comes for Jackson through injury. Neto comes for Sancho and starts on the left. 10 minutes later, he moves over to the right when Gusto comes for James and Nkunku comes for Madueke. I thought Madueke had an actually okay game. Difficult job for him. But, so this is where I think Maresca made a really good decision. So Sancho comes off and Nkunku comes on. Nkunku's not a touchline winger. So Marc Cucurella holds with, and Nkunku goes inside. Now, this has a natural... There's two benefits to this. One, when Cucurella is the one inside, like, he's just way less dangerous. So that's number one. And two, when the winger is the one holding with, whether it's Madueke or it's Neto or it's Sancho, like, the responsibilities for the wingback are actually really easy. There's no handoff, right? Like, it's the same guy who was pressing you. I mark him now. But when it's Cucurella goes from left back to left winger, and Nkunku goes inside, and Cucurella comes, and there is some inherent doubt, I think people call it like creating decisional doubt, right? Like, there is some situation where it's like, oh, do I follow him? Am I passing him on to the center back? Am I passing him on to the 6? Like, who is picking up Nkunku here when he moves inside? And similarly, it's like, oh, if I follow him, oh no, Cucurella's outside of me. Now what? And we saw this come like a great moment where Nkunku gets the ball on the edge of the box and he tries to slip Cucurella instead of going to goal himself. But he gets into this like really dangerous moment against Wan-Bissaka and Max Kilman. It doesn't come off. But I thought Nkunku was actually a very good accelerator in this game, where I bet you his like stat contribution looks like nothing. Like, it looks like he did not do very much. I don't think he took a shot. Yeah, 24 to 30 passes, like, didn't really create anything. One pass into the final third, no box touches. Doesn't look like much, but I thought his ability to sit in that pocket between 6 center back and other center back, or 6 center back and wing back, was very, very valuable. And this was the role that I really imagined for him at the beginning of the season, that I thought we would see the fullback hold width and Nkunku be the left winger to go inside. That is how I thought Chelsea would play to start the season. Let's see if this comes back. We've seen João Felix do that role a few times. I think Nkunku really, really suits that role. And especially when you end up in box midfields, like, you can end up with this setup with Palmer and Nkunku as your 2-10s. You have guys to show off the front, to run in behind, to do all of the above. And I think if Jackson's going to go out, it adds a lot of much-needed shots to your team. So I would be very, very curious to see, does this come against Brighton in the FA Cup? Does this come against Brighton in the league after that? Because I think there is a world where, let's say Jackson is fit for Brighton. Like, that's a lot of running in behind that is very, very dangerous against the Brighton team that is like just an absolute mess defensively. So that's my thoughts on the game. Sanchez also didn't play. Jorgensen started. I thought he should have done better on the goal, but I thought it was otherwise unremarkable. And I think right now we will all take unremarkable. On the sexy spreadsheet, it's about the same. Chelsea are something like 3/4 of an expected goal to the good. Their goal difference is now a little bit behind their expected goal difference. Their XG4 is quite high. Their XG against is mid-table-ish. Their shot difference is pretty good. Their box touch difference is even better. This is just a straight-up good team. They're something like half a goal better. Again, it's very funny to look at this season where like Chelsea are pretty stable on their expected goal difference stuff. Like, there aren't huge wins. There aren't huge losses. Like, Chelsea have only conceded more than 2 expected goals in a game twice all season. They've only created less than 1 once. And like, you look at last season and it's just like less than 1, less than 1, less than 1, more than 3, more than 2, more than 2, more than 2, more than 2. Like, just so up and down. And I think it's like kind of boring to be stable sometimes, but I don't mind some stability. On the chasing pack stuff, Villa dropped points, Forest won, Newcastle dropped points, Bournemouth dropped points. Chelsea are now in 4th on 43. Forest are +4 on them. Again, how real is that? I don't know. I don't think so at all, but some people seem to think so. Brighton played the most ridiculous team ever, so they win 7-0, which is quite funny. But Forest are in like a pretty tough route, like Fulham, Newcastle, Arsenal, City. After this is like a real murderer's row where I'd be very, very surprised if they picked up many points. And the bookies very much agree. Like Chelsea are favored ahead of City right now, which I think is a little bit aggressive. Way ahead of Forest, way ahead of Newcastle, way ahead of Bournemouth, way, way, way ahead of Villa. I think this is something like 65% implied probability, which is more or less where I've had them for a few weeks. They haven't moved much. And I got real snippy on Twitter about this week, but like, particularly this weekend, where like, last weekend everybody was like, Chelsea are going to come 8th. They're going to come 8th. And like, that's just not the case. Chelsea had a genuinely brutal run. Like Chelsea were like from Everton to West Ham to only put up 9 points in those 8 games is genuinely poor given the opposition. Genuinely poor. But like they were like probably played more like a 12 to 14 point team. Like 12, 13 points, something like that in that stretch. And all of a sudden you'd be like, well, they're like third comfortably and you don't really worry about it. And over the course of the season, they have played much more like the third or fourth best team than they have like the seventh or eighth best team. And so unless you think this is more real than all of this, unless you think the last 8 games are more real than the 16 games before that, or something has changed that you think that's more predictive, for example, if Cole Palmer or Nico Jackson went down, sure. I just don't feel that way. I think, if I'm being honest, it's probably like 3/4 the first 16, 1/4 the last 8. And so Chelsea are probably going to be something like a high 60s point team, which is about where all the projection models have them, regardless of who you look at. So again, it's not fun to be like, I don't know, you're 25 games into the season, one game should adjust your projections very, very small, unless it's game 36 or 38 and it's like, oh my God, you lost to this team, you lost to Newcastle in game 36, and now instead of being +3 points, you're -1 point or whatever it is. Like, okay, yeah, that's going to hugely swing the top 4 probabilities, but like it's not right now. Like Chelsea could win the next 2 and Forest could lose. Like Chelsea could very conceivably win their next 4 games. Forest could lose their next 4 games, and Chelsea are 9 points, or would be 8 points ahead of Forest. Like that's a totally not even particularly unlikely outcome. The same thing if I looked at Newcastle, right? Newcastle plays City, then Forest, then Liverpool, then West Ham. Like they could draw Forest and beat West Ham, take 4 points from 12, and all of a sudden Chelsea are 10 points clear. Like this is an entirely plausible outcome. Do I think it's super likely? No. But I don't know, 30% chance something like that happens? Sure. So again, the top 4 stuff, that's where I have them. People are going to keep gotching me. And like they're never going to finish top 4. Like Chelsea are probably going to finish 4th or 5th. It's by far the most likely finishing probabilities. The last thing to talk about is the transfer deadline, which passed today. Chelsea had a very busy day without doing much of anything. The only incoming was a gentleman named Mathis Amugu, who is not very good. He's 19. He doesn't play that much for Saint-Etienne. He is staying at Chelsea because Chelsea goofed their loan spots, and I would be genuinely shocked if he played outside of the Conference League, unless he is absolutely required, but you never know. On the outgoing side, Chelsea were quite busy, and I think they did an okay job on the outgoings. Cesare Cassidy moves for 13 million euros. Fabrizio Romano reported this as 15 plus a 25% sell-on. Sell-ons if you play a lot of Football Manager, you might be like, wow, it's 25% of the next sale. 99% of sell-ons are percentage of profit. The percentage of next sale is extremely uncommon in the real football world. So Chelsea paid about 15 million euros for him, plus add-ons that he almost certainly didn't achieve. They sell him for 15 million euros a year and a half later, about 2 years later. So they make a small profit on him, and they bank a sell-on for later. It is what it is. It didn't work out. I'm sure he'll be a useful player in Italy. João Felix leaves on loan to AC Milan, €5.5 million loan fee, full wage coverage. I think the João Felix signing sucked. We all knew it sucked. We all knew exactly how it was going to suck from the beginning. I think getting a big chunk of his fee, which I saw people saying 57 million euros. Transfermarkt is 52. I would be surprised if it's that high, but let's call it 52. Is honestly not bad. It's in a place where, like, if you could sell him for 40 million euros in the summer, you're basically calling it zero on Conor Gallagher's sale, which is fine, I suppose, but let's see if you can actually move him for that in the summer. I think consolidating Felix and Nkunku into more minutes for one of them is probably wise. And picking Nkunku for that is also probably wise. I think Nkunku is just a better player than Felix. So if Nkunku is going to eat all of Felix's league minutes and be a productive player, I think this might be very beneficial. Renato Vega moves to Juventus. €4 million loan fee. Again, this was reported as higher elsewhere. And full wage coverage. Again, I think if you're covering over a third of his initial fee to Chelsea on a loan deal, that's always very, very good. Carney Chukwuemeka moves to Dortmund on loan. Full wage coverage, €2.5 million loan fee. I will be watching this one extremely intently. I am a noted Carney hater. I don't think he's very good. I don't see that much there. There's certainly nothing in the data there, and obviously he's a young player who hasn't played very much. But Carney needs to play, and Dortmund are not great, and also play in a way that maybe doesn't suit him. But I do think the Bundesliga being so vertical will suit his like dribbling ability in space. So if he plays, like, I think this will be good for everyone. But I am very, very, very curious to see how this goes. And then the other loans, Ben Chilwell joins Crystal Palace for 40% wage coverage for the rest of the year. Again, whatever, you get the wages, some of the wages off the books. It's something like 100K for 6 months. So you get, I don't know, you get like 3 or 4 million off the books. Again, every million counts in the PSR land. But all of these moving loan parts have really finagled Chelsea from a loan perspective. Caleb Wiley gets recalled and then goes to Watford. Aaron Anselmino can't go to Marseille on loan, which I don't think he would have played, so I don't really understand where that was going to come from. But that's the window. And there were some academy outgoings as well. Samto Boniface went to Ipswich and Harvey Vale went to QPR, which is cool. I like that move for him. But overall, like, a thing that I really don't understand is I think Chelsea actually did like quite well with the loans here. They got solid fees. Axel Disasi also is the other one missing. 6 million loan fee to Aston Villa. He wasn't playing at Chelsea. He makes a lot of money. I think you had to consolidate Tosin and him into one, and turning Disasi into Trev, who makes less money and has no amortization hit, is probably wise, especially if you can move Disasi off the back of this for decent money. But like getting solid loan fees is nice. Like you cover a big chunk of the amortization for the year this way. But Chelsea did like reasonably well with their loans, to the degree that like I look at the Summers loans, which were frankly a disaster, and I'm just like, what happened there? What did this Swansea loan guy do? So let's see. This is the squad for the rest of the year. Guia went down with a hamstring at the end of the game. Jackson goes off with a hamstring. If both those guys are out, I assume it'll be Nkunku 9 minutes. Maybe it'll be Palmer 9 minutes. I don't know. Maresca has spoken about that previously. I think Chelsea would really struggle if they don't have a 9. And we all pointed to it and said, you should probably go buy another striker just in case, or loan one in, or whatever it is. So maybe we'll see Shim Mahuka. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to be all for me. We get Brighton in the FA Cup on the weekend, and we'll see where things go from there. As always, enjoy the soccer.